Hi, and welcome to SLA Canada's April 2020 Chat-N-R, starring Gary Price. My name is Rebecca Jones of Dysart & Jones, and I'll be the host. We are delighted to be hosting these on behalf of SLA Canada. The webinar will start in just a minute with SLA Canada's President, Juanita Richardson, introducing and welcoming all of you. The next Chat-N-R will be Thursday, May 28th. Put it on your calendar now. The Chat-N-Rs, both the webinar version and the podcast version, will be available on dysartjones.com and also in SLA Canada's Connect section. Thanks for joining us.
p.m. Eastern Time, again via Zoom. And please don't hesitate to join our board meetings. Board meetings are open to any SLA member. To find all about all these sessions and our board meetings, etc., we have our newly launched Canada Connect. So make sure you tick the box to join our Canadian community and get access to our Connect, so you can see all that information there. We will include there the history from our 3 chapters into one place, so you won't miss any historical information. I want to just share the announcement that perhaps you've already seen, that SLA headquarters has revealed the outcome of the vote for the new name. So the new name for our association is Information Professionals and Specialized Librarians Association. So with that, I would like to welcome you to this SLA Canada Chat-N-R. Back to you, Rebecca.
Thank you so much. We are up to 77 people. I actually am misty that there's so many people coming together, and really it's always Jane's programming. I'm just the techno nerd here and the talker, of course. And I'm just so delighted that so many people recognize the gold miner that we have here, Gary Price. I think he's been unrecognized for far too long, not just in our profession, but in the information sector. Because those of you, if you haven't heard Gary Price, you are in for such a treat. Gary is not only a long-term member of SLA, he is of course the curator of InfoDocket. And if you don't follow InfoDocket, it's at InfoDocket, D-O-C-K-E-T. You must on Twitter, and of course as part of Library Journal. It's the free part of Library Journal. Gary has been a long-time Canadian wannabe, long before whatever happened. When he was 8, and he's told me this several times, I drink beer, he drinks Coke, actually. That's it. And so when he was 8, his father and mother brought he and his sister up for a trip to Canada. He went to the Ontario Science Museum, or Science Center. Stephen and Jane and Graham, and Heather, we all know it so well. And they stayed at the Inn on the Park. It's gone now. But ever since then, I know, I can see Kirsten Smith laughing. He just loves everything Canada, and usually knows much more about what's going on than I do. And keeps me up to date on new announcements yesterday from UBC and McMaster. Bronwyn, you're nodding, yes. So I'm not going to take up too much time. I'm going to spotlight Gary. See, I can do this now. Spotlight video. There we are. So for those of you just joining us, welcome to the SLA Canada Chat-N-R. The first, and I'm still trying to let people in. There we go. We're up to 80. Yoo-hoo! The very first Chat-N-R that Jane organized for SLA Canada. The recording, because that was Brian Pitchman, and he was talking about cybersecurity. So important. He, like Gary, gave great free and fee applications and sites that we highly encourage you to have a look at. It is both in the SLA Connect library. I uploaded it there, and it's on the Dysart Jones site. And we are redoing the site so that it's easy to find all these webinars and podcasts. And Gary, I know you so well. You are breathing that breath of, okay, let's get started. Okay. So Gary, I said in the advertisement that, you know, if you want to own the web, if you want to mine the web, you have to find somebody who understands how to mine it. And you, like, really, it's incredible when I look at the list of sources, sites, applications that you're about to share with us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to start off with, before you dive in and take us all with you, how do you find these things? How do you know about these sites, sources, and apps?
Well, first of all, thank you for the nice introduction, the wonderful introduction. I truly feel like I'm amongst friends. Everybody from my wonderful friend Rebecca, Jane, who I've been working for and with for 20 years. I see my good friend Stephen Abram, both Jane and, turn off the phone there. Both Jane and Stephen are such good friends that they were at my wedding, which is coming up on 12 years next week. How do I do it, or what do I do? It's been a lifelong dream of mine, and I never realized it until I became a librarian. Like many people in our profession, I came to this profession, let me turn on the light again, after working in journalism for a while. I think like a journalist, but I also think like a librarian. And most of the time, they're very, there's a lot of synergy between the two of them. But for me, going back, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. I used to go to the library asking them on Saturday, since they were closed on Sunday, if I could take the reference books home. The key to it, though, in the digital age is, one, realizing you're not going to get to everything, but it comes back to understanding how information flows. And what's different now than it was 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years ago is that now, in many cases, you can get to the primary source, along with all of the news and secondary sources, but you can get to the primary source as those sources are released. So one of the things is the ability to go to the source and keep a watchful eye on what they're releasing. And of course, those sources can be whatever you're interested in. It's also allowing specialists in whatever the topic is to help you with your curation. So it's finding those curators, subject-based curators. So an example would be, and I have it on the page, you know, while I'm not a doctor, nor do I play one on TV, but these days, you know, we're all interested in COVID-related materials. Well, not too far from where I'm sitting, outside, about 1 mile outside of Washington, D.C., and I promise Rebecca I will keep my politics to myself, although I think we're probably most in alignment with them. There's a place called the National Library of Medicine, which I'm sure many of you have visited over the years. And at the National Library of Medicine, there are experts who run a database called Disaster Line. And there, every day, they are curating their own collection, which is now heavily, as you can imagine, loaded with COVID resources, quality resources. So one of the things I do is I mine their work. Another example would be a source like ReliefWeb. ReliefWeb is a global project where they're bringing in anything and everything there is to do about humanitarian issues. So these are experts all over the world. They ingest a huge variety of materials, maps, reports, whatever. They put it all in their database, and I'm also looking at those things. So it's one, going to those individual primary sources. Two, letting experts help me curate what I'm doing that I can then select from. And then three, another wonderful source, again, and there's one of these, if not more, for every topic under the sun and then some, is the use of what are often referred to as business or trade press journals, trade press magazines. And very often, these are the first places where you're going to learn about a new report resource on whatever that topic might be. So I've prepared something, and I'll show it to you once we start sharing screen, but something I've never been able to find, and maybe there's one out there, but it's just a directory of trade press publications, both in US, Canada, UK, Australia, English language. So unable to find one, over the last couple of months, I started building my own. and it needs a lot of work. It's a project I would love some help on. But I've now assembled about 750 or so trade journals from all over the countries I've just mentioned. So for example, I'm interested in, again, we'll use the topic of the day, COVID, but I'm interested in the COVID and the food supply and how food is being distributed and all the things going on with meat plants and pork processing facilities. Well, there are trade publications devoted to all of those topics. So if I'm interested in the supermarket business, how is food being distributed? There's supermarket news and other publications. As many of you might know, who know me a little bit, I'm also an aviation geek. And one industry that is suffering a lot from the current situation is the aviation industry. And of course, as you know, there are hundreds of publications dealing with the aviation world. So it's finding those primary sources, monitoring them constantly. 2, trade press. 3, using experts in whatever the topic might be to help you curate. And I thank you for mentioning InfoDocket. As much as I try to share news and new resources there, really the underlying idea of it, if you go back 20 years, was basically a ready reference, if you like, virtual new bookshelf. So people could come in, find new resources, not just news, but actual new resources, database reports, and then take them and use those in their own local collections. And we'll get to more about that in a moment, but one thing I will mention, which we could do an entire session on, is web archiving. I think this is vitally important. I think it's something that's been overlooked by at least the masses till this point. I think now, as I said in a webinar a few days ago, this is a teachable moment about the importance of web archiving, making sure that what's online today will be available in some format in the future. And one of the things that I do on InfoDocket and everything else I do, whether it be sending Rebecca a new link or something, everything I post on InfoDocket is archived by me for all in the Wayback Machine at the time of discovery. So I'm not only, if you like, excuse my French or my English, but I'm not only covering my butts to make sure that what's out there is available. So if somebody looks in and says, Gary, that document is gone, or more likely, Gary, those words on the page that you sent me are gone, I can say, no, they were there. Here's the link to what I saw. And I also believe that the entire library community in North America should be working with the citation organizations to change the standard for open web citation. Meaning if you're linking to an article from the Globe and Mail or a statistical report from Health Canada or something from the Government Accounting Office here in the States, there should be 2 URLs and a web citation. One to whatever you saw at that, what we'll call the live URL, globeandmail.ca//. Well, another one to what you saw at the time when you did the actual research using either the Wayback Machine or another long-term web archive.
Gary?
Yes.
Just before you go on.
Okay, bye.
No.
Oh, by the way, everybody, I Canadified my Dunkin' Donuts. You see that? Oh, how I wish.
Okay, I'm going to try our first poll. I realized I should have asked a question about, where people were from, but I think we have lots of Americans on here. Does everybody know where you raise your hand in the chat box, in the participant box? Does everybody know where to do that? Okay, so raise your hand if you're in Canada. Estelle Metier, look at you. Wow. Okay. Yeah, there we are. Okay, now, oh, we do have a few people by phone. Oh, great. All right, wonderful. I'm going to launch our first poll. So we just have all these new features in Zoom, and I'm going to launch this poll. Let's see what happens here. Oh, there. Can everybody see this? I hope you can see this. So if you could just let us know so that Gary can customize, anyway, this is all being recorded. I have to talk articulately. Where you are working right now, and I didn't put, if you don't have a job right now, you're in your own company, okay? put that you're in your own company. Mainly corporate. Has everybody had a chance to fill this in? No, we only have 62 of 81 people. So if you could just tell us where you're working, that would be terrific. We do have a couple from the association or an association. By far, corporate. We have a couple of public. Yep. Do you get to see this too? Can anybody else see this?
I can see it.
Oh, you can see it. All right. This is fascinating. Okay. So that's what it looks like. We have the majority are corporate, Gary, and then academic.
I should say, by the way, in addition to doing InfoDocket, which is a site that some of you know I started years ago calling it Resource Shelf. InfoDocket's been around for 10 years. I then hooked up with Library Journal, who are now, the last 10 years or so, have been paying me for what I used to do for free. And in addition to that, I do some consulting. One organization I do some work with is EBSCO. And another one I do some work with is run by a wonderful person who happens to be Canadian by birth, and that is Mary Lee Kennedy. I've been doing some work for the Association of Research Libraries here in Washington for the past year. So are we ready to share some screen? And Rebecca, you can just jump in at any time and ask questions or share questions with the audience with me, but we'll go into the share screen mode. Ready? Here we go.
Here we go.
And tell me if you can see my screen.
I can see it.
Hooray. And there's a typo there, which makes it always good.
That way people know you're real. You are not a bot.
I am not a bot. I'm a human who's bad at spelling. And by the time, there we go. So we know about InfoDocket. I hope you come by, blah, 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 blah. Here's today's presentation, which is already live, so you want to follow along. I'm not going to spend too much time because I've already talked about these. Another, of course, and in many cases, you know more about this than I do, ladies and gentlemen, but, you know, places. So I talked about business press. Obviously, academic articles and organizations are great for finding experts. When you find a name, then you can research the name, find what they've written. But as another great Canadian, Malcolm Gladwell, talks about, reading academic papers can often clue you into things that you're not going to see elsewhere ever or for a long time. And of course, trade associations, professional societies, etc. So those, again, complement what I said earlier about places where you can learn about new things. And the fact of the matter is, now all of these organizations are online, and if you work your way through them, you can often find the full text reports that are high quality, and many cases are available no charge. I talked about then using specialty databases and exploiting non-resources. So PubMed is great, even though you don't think of it as a place to find information about internet and how internet is being used. PubMed's great for that type of thing. And of course, with the CEDAR filings in Canada and the SEC filings, they're just a godsend. Picking up the phone, blah, blah, blah. Of course, searching on specific terms. I have a whole list, and I'll provide that to you. But terms like literature review, systematic review, handbook, guidebooks, so many others can be great ways of narrowing and focusing your search, especially when you're looking for these types of materials in Google and other open web search engines, if there are any others. That's something that, you know, when we started doing this 20 years ago, and then Google came along, and there were other open web search tools. Now, I can't believe it. It's hard to believe, but it really has become a zero-sum game. There is Bing, there is DuckDuckGo, and they have some valuable. I think the Bing news search is really good. But we know for most people, it's boiled down to a zero-sum game, and that's a conversation about the dangers of that at another time and issues with Google, but that's another time. Using non-textual materials, well, I have some examples of that in the list of resources, but I believe we could do an entire semester on how non-textual materials, specifically audio and video, are not getting the use they should be for research purposes, because one, they're often difficult to find, and two, once you find them, you often, at least now, this will change at some point, you have to go in Word and actually listen to it versus being able to search it. That's changing quickly, but right now, non-textual audio video materials, podcasts, college lectures and the like are not as easy to use as they should be. I think this will change over time. I've been saying that for a while, and I think now, especially with so much going on multimedia-wise because of COVID, I think there's even more of a need to make that material chatifies, chat.org, things like this, not only viewable, which is easy to do, but make the actual words spoken keyword searchable to get to things quickly. Saving people time and yourself time is key to the whole thing. So that's that. So let's get to some resources.
Gary.
Rebecca, the question? Yes.
No, it's not a question. I just wanted to say Amy Anderson used a podcast to find details on where a startup manufactures its products a few months ago.
Exactly. The problem is, or the challenge is, it's never a problem. The challenge is making that material much easier to get to. And yes, there is some work in this area, but it needs to be much more rampant to easily be able to type in whatever the name of the company that Amy was interested in and being able to go right to it. And I'll give you an example of that later on. And now there are tools even like Otter.ai that allows you, it's a great app and it works pretty well compared to speech to text recognition a few years ago. Otter.ai and others have really come a long way. And Otter.ai is a free app. You get something like 600 hours. They're starting to limit what you can do with it, but you can actually speak into it or put it up to a microphone or to a speaker, and it'll actually word for word convert it from speech to text. This is the resource that I mentioned, that Rebecca mentioned, that I posted yesterday. It's just a really cool project, and it's, again, another type of search from UBC, McMaster, U of T, Simon Fraser. It's called Geodesy, and this is a beta, so remember that. But this allows you to search for Canadian research data by geographic location. So you're actually searching the map, limiting the map to a specific area, and then it will bring back research for you from that particular area. So again, it's kind of like if you were searching for a local pizza parlor on a Yelp or something. It's the same type of idea, but it's looking at the metadata to help you decide, to help determine where either the research is about or where the research came from, and allowing you to search this way using a subset right now of the Scholars Portal Dataverse. So that's brand new, and I think it's a really exciting project and something we're going to see more of. So finding authoritative, I mentioned this earlier, where are organizations that can help you do what I'm talking about? Well, one, and I've linked to it now for one of the first times, it needs a lot of work, but I'm happy to share it with you guys. This is the collection of trade publications that I've been assembling. And if anybody wants to help me take this to the next level, I'd love to hear from you. But as you can see, everything from the Financial Planning Trade Magazine to the trade publication for people in the fire industry, to my favorite one, let me scroll down here. And again, I'm just scratching the surface in terms of the amount that I have here. But my favorite one is located under the letter S. So let me get to it. And to show you that there's a magazine for every topic, there you go, at line number 673. This is the publication for the potato industry called Spudman. So to say that there isn't a trade publication or a trade site for whatever you're interested in is probably not the case. And you can learn so much about these. You can learn so much. Plus, there's another value to it. One, yes, you can use it to find new resources, new databases, that type of thing. Two, it allows you to often find experts. One of the greatest things for me about the internet, about the web, is the ability to get to the source in a much more expedited manner than it used to be pre-internet.
Right.
So now, even though you could look at Spudman, and as you browse the magazine, you could find reporters whose job it is to cover the potato industry, and which you could reach out to. And two, this magazine names all sorts of people who are the head of whatever organization. So again, one of the best things about the internet for me is the ability to find experts with some credibility, because they, you know, the fact that they were mentioned in a publication like this gives them a little bit more credibility than if you just found their name online, blah, 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 blah.
Right, and so not to, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to clarify that it's not just the publications. That is the actual website. So it's all their news, their media alerts. It is, who's on their board. It's fantastic.
So again, using that is one of the places and one of the tools in this case to answer Rebecca's original question of me, where I can find new things, whatever the topic might be. Now, I'm not a big reader of Spudman. I'm not a big, I like French fries. My son loves French fries. I like a good baked potato. But my point is that there's somebody covering whatever the topic might be. There's always an expert.
Absolutely.
Okay. Another excellent resource for finding authoritative organizations. Oh, and by the way, I need to say about the trade publications, while some are paywall, or some of it is paywall, depending on the publication, a lot of these publications give a lot away on the open web.
Right.
And if you're covering a topic on a regular basis, many, if not most, have newsletters. That's another way that I get pushed information that I don't always have to be going out looking for. So again, subscribing to the newsletter, and this is a way to add value in your organization of getting a bunch of them, and then you doing the abstracting, the curating of them, and sending an abstract, a curation of the best of the newsletters for those that you work with. Another wonderful resource that comes out every year is the use of think tanks. So this is, and I'll update the link here, this is the Global Think Tank Report that comes from the University of Pennsylvania. And there are think tanks about every topic, again, that you could think of. Some are more credible than others, but this one provides a global list of the best think tanks in the world, rated by the, what's their official name? The Think Tanks and Civil Societies program at the University of Pennsylvania. And again, experts, finding experts, one thing you can be doing with it. Two, you can be going to their websites and mining it for publications. So again, if you can, using some of the tools we'll talk about later, you can be having you can have some of this information pushed to you on a very regular basis. So again, it's using a directory like this, which I think is the best one, to find the think tanks that are of interest to you, finding the experts, finding where they're putting their publications, and then mining it and curating it and then sharing it with others. You know, one of our jobs is to show people what they already don't know or can't easily find. And a lot of times you will see things from these organizations, these trade publications, that if you could, it's one thing to do a newsletter every day or every week or every month. It's another thing to say, Ms. Jones, this is really something that I think might be of interest to you. One sentence, one URL, goodbye. And after you do that for a while, you've made yourself much more valuable in your organization. You've not just talked about what you can do, but you've demonstrated it with practical knowledge that these people might not have seen or know about already. And we also know you make yourself look extra good, I think. You make yourself look extra good if you can do this on a timely basis. If you can share something, did you see this was released a couple of hours ago? That's not always easy to do, but the sooner you can share this, having your boss or somebody else in your organization know it before their peers just makes everybody feel good, look good, and adds more value to what you're doing. Obviously, that's easier said than done, but it can be done. ORCID is another database that's completely, well, ORCID, I'm going to skip one. ORCID, as many of you already know, especially those in academia, is a personal identification database usually used by people in the academic world. They can set up their profile. They often have their vitae and list of publications there. So it's another way of helping find out if somebody is legitimate, which again, as we all know, is also a challenge on the open web. And these are some of the extra things that librarians know about and can do that the layperson might not know. So again, ORCID is probably something you already are familiar with. In GRID, just like we talked about publications, just like we talked about think tanks, This is a CC0 database. You can download it yourself. You can see University of Toronto is listed #2 here. But this is a database of research organizations, research institutes globally. You can, obviously, you can search and browse it online. As I said, for free, you can download the entire data set and do with it as you like. So if you're trying to find research organizations wherever or about any topic, this is a great place to begin. So again, going to the source, finding experts. One of the best resources, I think, and they cover so many different topics, are the, what we'll call legislative research organizations from legislatures, legislative bodies around the world. And I've listed a few of them. Here in the States, it's only been in the last year and a half or so that there was an official access point to reports from the Congressional Research Service, an organization that used to be run by our friend Donna Sheeter. But what I've been doing but now they are officially available via the official CRS portal. There are reports about every topic under the sun. Another place, an unofficial place to get them, is everycrsreport.com. They do some nice massaging of the reports. They make them HTML friendly. They will also show you how the report has changed from week 1 to week 15 every time it's updated. So again, either of those are excellent resources for CRS. And then I've given you the Hill Notes, as they're called, from the Parliament Library in Ottawa, the European Parliament Research Service, and the UK House of Parliament. So one of the things I've been doing is curating these from all these global organizations when they have something to do with COVID. And as you can see here, I just updated the database yesterday, but there is a report for just about every topic you can think of. So from testing, the first group is the CRS report, cybercrime and COVID, oil and gas pipeline sector. These reports, one, come from a very authoritative organization. They're frequently updated. And again, the people who are writing them are experts in the topics. So there is the I have to break this up even more, but the long growing list of CRS reports from the Congressional Research Service. And then if you scroll down, I have reports here. There are 10 or so far available from the Canadian Parliament Library. Open source intelligence and pandemic early warning. It's a fascinating report. Here are reports which also can give you a different perspective on whatever the topic is. If you're looking about Canada from the EU, so for example, here, this came out earlier this week. It's a little brief, coronavirus movement, restrictions, and quarantine in Canada, but written by the European Parliament Research Service. And then down at the bottom, another spreadsheet of reports from the UK House of Parliament and House of Lords libraries.
Gary, what are you creating these in?
Yes. I'm sorry?
What database are you using to create these in?
It's called Google Sheets.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Okay, so at least
one of the things that I've never started using, I only started using Google Sheets as recently as a few weeks ago because these lists, I traditionally just will have a nonstop list and they were getting out of hand. So while, there are other, I'm doing something, in this case, I will readily admit I'm using a product sometimes that I don't practice what I preach. There are plenty of other products out there that will allow you to embed spreadsheets, but like everybody, I'm the lemming and I'm jumping onto the Google Sheet bandwagon.
Okay.
So those are Google Sheets.
That's great. Gary, can I just ask you a question that came in from Karen? And she's asking, is there a hack for searching for information in a language that you don't know besides Google Translate?
There is Bing Translate, but in terms of searching well, I can actually mention, I know of a new search engine that will allow you to type it in English, and then we'll translate it out to whatever the country publication is from whatever country, and then translate it back.
Oh.
And that one, actually the gentleman who runs this, and we can talk about this, it's called GDELT. It's run by a gentleman, now funded by Google, of course, but Caleb is a person who lives here in DC, and Caleb spoke several years ago, one at the Charleston conference, and 2 at good old Webster University here in Washington.
Oh,
So the GDELT, and we can go into that if we have time, but it is an
okay.
incredibly powerful new search tool. Actually, let me just jump right in. So this is the GDELT. So you know what? If it comes up, I might as well mention it. So GDELT summary. This is GDELT for Dummies, which I fall into. If you're somebody who can work with APIs and all of that, you can go well beyond what you can do here. But GDELT has three different or 4 different now databases. One is the global database of aggregated news from all over the world. And the other databases are the Chiron Explorer. Let me see if I can bring that one up real quick. So in this, I gotta work for our news. Let me search on a word or a name, COVID. Well, what this is doing is actually what you're seeing down here at the bottom. For those of you who do media research, this is fascinating. This looks at CNN, MSNBC, BBC, and Fox, and is actually looking at what they call the Chiron in television, the actual text below the screen, at the bottom of the screen. Trump said this, or COVID this. This is actually allowing you to search and browse on what's at the bottom of the screen, which for a lot of people is all they see, and they're not even paying attention to what's actually being said. So that's the one database. The other database, and I believe, let's see if I'm on. Actually, right now, I think I am using a Canadian IP address. I have a VPN. But this is the Television News Archive, which comes from the Internet Archive and allows you to use this database to search the actual words spoken in television broadcasts. And then I believe this will work in Canada, don't hold me to it, allows you to watch the clips at 30 seconds at a time. So it's an actual way to keyword search video news from those news organizations. But the main gist of global news coverage is allowing you to search text-based news. You can search by keywords. You can limit. This database is updated constantly. You can limit by country, by language. You can also start getting into, you know, if it's looking at the images, are the images popular compared to other? Is the tone of the face happy faces or mostly unhappy faces? It's doing a lot of AI, if you like, machine learning with the data and giving you a lot of additional information that way. And we can look on this, but I'm pretty sure this will translate it from one language into another and then translate it back. So that is GDELT. It's a wonderful, and again, if you're a programmer, somebody who can work with APIs, you can take this well beyond what you can do just with the interface for dummies.
It's fantastic.
Let me mention another specific search tool. I mentioned Relief Web. Both is an expert curation tool and Disaster Lit. Those are both searchable databases, but I use them as expert curation tools on those particular subjects. But a search engine, and a question that a lot of us get is there anything other than Google Scholar? And there are plenty of choices beyond Google Scholar. Some are better than others. This one I can't recommend enough. Google Scholar is great, but there are other tools out there. And even if you don't use this one versus another one on a regular basis, I believe it's important for the information professional to know about a wide variety of tools and using the best tool for whatever they need to do. But this is a project that started several years ago. Unlike a lot of projects in our world, this one is well funded. It comes from the Paul Allen Institute of Artificial Intelligence. The people running this are proven winners in the online database world. One of the gentlemen who was running this sold his airfare company, his airfare alert company to Microsoft. If you remember years ago, there was a service, and you can still do it via Microsoft, that would say, don't buy the fare now, wait a couple of weeks. Well, the technology that powers that was started by the guy who was running this in Seattle. But unlike Google Scholar, this resource is updating and adding new features constantly. They now have metadata for over 185 million research articles in here. But again, let me just do a simple search, a search that you wouldn't want to do. So you can see here, it's also very simple to explain to people. You can do a lot of limiting by just moving the levers back and forth, or saying you just want to find papers that their algorithm has determined have comprehensive lit reviews in them. So instead of having to do anything else, you just click on the lit review button and it will find papers with lots of links, lots of literature reviews. You can limit by date by just clicking on this button, and you can limit to papers that only have a PDF by limiting to this button. But this is across all topics, and they are both crawling the open web and getting feeds from some of the academic publishers. As you can see, you can narrow and focus by these tools. Look who comes up, our good friend Ken. So when I just type in those 4 or 5 letters, he comes up. But I urge you to take a look at some of these. I don't want to use the word alternative because Google Scholar is just one resource. For the sake of conversation, alternative academic research tools that cover multiple topics. Another one that I highly recommend using is Microsoft Academic. This was not the original Microsoft product that was around many years ago and was terrible. And it's much better now. Core is a project to aggregate only open access articles and create feeds for them, embed all sorts of things. This is a national project in the UK, but is global in scope. Of course, the directories of open access journals and open access books. You probably all know about Unpaywall. If you don't, Unpaywall has a little browser add-on. And if you're searching for an article and it finds that there's an open access version of that article available, it will light up and give you a direct link to the open access article. So it's almost, in my case, mom-proof. If I could get her to download this, she could actually find the article just by searching anywhere. If it's looking obviously at the DOI, and if it matches the DOI and it finds that there's an open access version using that DOI, you just click on the button and it opens. And this is Unpaywall comes from Canada, comes out of Vancouver from Jason Preem and Heather Piwawar. Jason, many of you might know, is also the godfather of altmetrics. So this is more quality material, quality tools coming from Canada.
Great.
Oh my goodness, it's 47 after already.
It's all right.
I'm going to skip a few of these, a lot of them.
Well,
but
don't
I also
social media.
I'm going to skip those. You want? Okay.
Just a little bit on social media.
Hoaxy is a project that's been around now for several years. And if you're looking to determine if something is legitimate or not, both the actual source and is it being talked about on social media, let me reload this here. This might be the place both for Twitter and for news. It comes from Indiana University. For some reason, I can't get this screen. Try one more thing. I can't get this to log off. Well, take my word for it. Let's see. Nope. That's weird. You try it. Try it at home. And then Twitter sentiment analysis tool allows you to see general trends about how people are talking about something on Twitter. And there are many fee-based Twitter sentiment tools out there. This one comes from North Carolina State and is free. And then again, you can learn more about it here. Non-textual materials, I've mentioned, even though it's a US-based news program, the PBS NewsHour, originally called the McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour, with one Canadian in there. The entire archive of their program now is available for free online, back to the very beginning through the American Archive of Public Broadcasting that's located both in Boston and here at the Library of Congress. So if you're looking for a news clip from 1994, if it was covered on the PBS NewsHour, you very likely could find it here. I've also mentioned the CPAC video archive, but one of the great video archives, and again, even though it's US-based, it's global in scope, is the C-SPAN video library. This would be one of my desert island resources, assuming my desert island has Wi-Fi and I don't want to get rescued. Kind of a weird version of Gilligan's Island for the 21st century. So, ladies and gentlemen, this database has basically everything that has ever aired on the C-SPAN networks forever. So it can be, if they're covering something from Canada, the CBC coverage might be in here. If they're talking to all of the author interviews from book notes and other programs, they're all in here. If they go on a field trip to a location, they're in here. When a global political leader passes away, for example, they very likely have been on C-SPAN, either speaking in the US or coverage from their country. All of that is in here. And let me just show you what a results page looks like, because there's another little thing here that's really cool. So if I just search for the word newspaper, I am not, in this case, and you can search by different categories here, but I'm not just searching for a newspaper in the metadata. I can also go ahead and actually search the transcripts of every one of these videos. So if they say Rebecca Jones, Toronto, at 3 minutes and 35 seconds, you can actually search for it, find it in the transcript, click again, and watch the streaming video. This is what I was talking about earlier, that we're going to be seeing more from others moving forward. And we already, as I said, we're already seeing it. So this is both metadata search and transcript search. Another feature about it that's really cool is you can actually create a custom clip. So let's say you're a student or you're a teacher and you don't want to share the entire 45-minute lecture with the student or the interview with the student or with the class. You just want the student or the person watching it to watch between 3 minutes and 31 seconds and 4 minutes and 17. You can simply move levers left and right, click save, get a direct URL to that clip that's hosted on the C-SPAN site, share that clip with others, and you're done. So this gives a great usability to the video as well.
Wow.
Oh, and finally for video, copyright beware. I'm talking to a group of librarians and I am one. But one question I get quite a bit is how can I save video from whether it be CBC or CBS or whomever to my local computer for my own local use. I've tried a lot of these different tools. There's a bunch of free ones. One of the few fee-based resources I'm talking about today is Downy, and that is a fee-based tool that works across many different video platforms, allowing you to simply and quickly download a video for your own local use and saving on your hard drive. One of the other things that I want to mention before we run out of time is the Wayback Machine. We've talked about, I mentioned that earlier, but to me, and I won't go through the whole spiel about the importance of web archiving, but right now, more so than ever before, it's really important, I think, to be archiving web materials. You know, there are a lot of projects out there that are archiving a lot of COVID-related materials, but the crawlers can't be everywhere at every time, all the time, and they can't know, especially a lot of the local stuff. So I'm hoping that more and more people will say, you know, this is interesting. We're seeing museums trying to save physical things. Well, I encourage all of you to save local things about COVID that are going on in your community. But one of the great things about it, as I mentioned earlier, is now that you can use this interface to basically paste in any URL. So let me just paste in Dysart Jones and send the Wayback Crawler to that page at that exact moment in time. But even better, if you are a registered Internet Archive user and it's free, it will not only, if you choose to, it will not only save the URL that you're putting in, but it will save all the outbound links from that page at the same time. So now you're not only getting a version of that page, but if you want to then start clicking on the links, all of that is synced in time. So if you want to look at what the, let me click here. If you want to know what the Dysart Jones web homepage looked like at 4:54 Eastern time, and then all of the outbound links and how they look and what did they look like at 4:54 Eastern time, you can now do it for free using the Wayback Machine. So now, as you can see here, the crawler is going to all of these underlying links on Dysart Jones and making a copy of all of them at the exact same time. And remember, it's not only the fact that in some cases, it'll even tell you if it's the first time the page has been archived. That's great. because things do disappear on the internet. We know that more now than ever before. Link rot is a huge problem. The half-life of a web page is often minutes. And it's one thing if the actual page or document disappears, but it's also important to remember and tell this to others. Even if the page might disappear, it's very easy to change the text or remove a graphic on a web page. Change the actual URL stays the same, but the page is different. That's why, you know, making multiple copies of the same page over time is very, very important.
Right. How important for special collections in the universities and for public libraries that are curating community content, which nobody else seems to be doing.
Right, and now I will mention, it's not listed here, I will go back and add the link. The Internet Archive has a fee-based service. It's one of the ways they can raise some revenue, called Archivit or Archive It, that works with the organizations. And a lot of those academic librarians on the call probably are aware of it, but they work with a lot of organizations, libraries, schools, whatever, to say, we're gonna crawl and recrawl this specific set of URLs, ones that you're sharing with us every day, every week, whatever. So that's how a lot of organizations do it. However, I should tell you that if you can't afford it or you don't want to go into that, you know, using SafePage now is a worthy alternative. And but it's actually, Rebecca, it's gotten easier than actually having to cut and paste into that URL box. You see this little thing now on the page? This is brand new, or publicly brand new. You can now just group as many URLs as you want. I mean, I'm talking into the thousands. And you can send them to spn@archive.org. If optional, but if you put in the subject line, capture outlinks, it will go to each one of those URLs, capture the outlinks, like I said a moment ago. And within 5 to 10 minutes, you will get an email back of all of the URLs that are just archived, and telling you if it was the first time it was archived, and giving you a direct link to all of those archived URLs. Then you can save it in your inbox or save it in a folder. And now if you're using a searchable email service, now all of those URLs are now, and you know that you've archived them, and you can get back to them easily by searching for them in your mail. Okay. Does that make sense? Yeah. So now web archiving is as simple as sending an email to that specific address. I also want to mention one more here. Web Recorder is a DVR for your web, for the web, and this allows you to save pages and PDFs locally on your hard drive if you like. But arquivo.pt, I don't speak Portuguese nor read Portuguese, but I'm mentioning arquivo.pt because it can often be a time saver if you're looking for an archived piece of material. First of all, we all know that the Wayback Machine is not keyword searchable. The individual collections in Archivit, which are publicly available, are keyword searchable. So that's one way of keyword searching, but you first have to find the collection, and then you have to search it. Arquivo.pt is a national web archive from Portugal. However, as you can see here, they have an English language interface, and they have a sizable subset of the Wayback Machine in here. So, and it is keyword searchable. And you can even do an advanced search on it and limit by particular format of the web page. So if you're looking for a specific name of a person or of a company, you can start going through the entire Wayback Machine process of working your way through the URLs. But often it might be useful to check here and do a keyword search for it and see if that page actually exists or that name exists. So if I type in Jane Dysart, I can limit it to pages from 1996 to 2007. I search, I don't know what's gonna happen here. And there's Jane Dysart's Info Buzz from 2005. Now, Jane's shaking her head, oh my gosh. The point is that I could do this, if I didn't know that there was a product called Jane Dysart's Info Buzz, that'd be one thing. But again, this is a potential time saver when you're going out and doing some web archive searching. Questions that I often get are, what tool did I use to bring all of these disparate materials in one place for myself? You might want to take a look at InnoReader. It's what I use. In one place, you could have RSS feeds, Twitter tweets, Facebook posts all coming into one place. You can narrow and focus them. You can set up alerts saying that I'm going to do a keyword search on Google, but I want to be notified if that Google keyword search has the name Rebecca Jones, Dysart Jones on the page. You can do all sorts of alerts. I mentioned GDELT earlier. There's another wonderful web news search tool here that if you register for it, it's free. For some of it, is one of the most powerful open web news search tools I've seen out there. Event Registry is a service that provides open web news to serve organizations like Bloomberg and the like. So if you're looking for a powerful open web news search tool, I often see sources here I don't see elsewhere. Take a look at that one. And then a resource I've been mentioning for years is this one. This is really the bread and butter. How can you know about a minute piece of information on a web page before everybody else does, or ever notices it? Website Watcher is a tool that costs about $80 US. You buy it for a license for a year. This will allow you to see what has changed on any web page that you put into the tool. It works with RSS feeds, but it will look in an entire web page and say, well, on the Dysart Jones homepage, on Monday it said Jane was doing this and Rebecca was doing that. But on Wednesday, they reverse roles, or Jane isn't doing what she was doing on Monday. This is a way, when people have said to me over the years, how do you know about this before we've even mentioned it? Often the web page change happens before the news release goes out, and then the news story goes out. Often you can detect things with Website Watcher that you couldn't detect elsewhere, because this tool can be running as often as you like, as you want it to, in the background. So you can say once an hour, check this group of URLs, and if anything has changed, highlight it in red to let me know that something has changed. And then once you click on it, we'll highlight the change on the page, what has been added, what has been removed. As a matter of fact, you don't even have to go to it. You can have this running in the background and set up with your email that every time something on a specific page changes, an attachment will be emailed to you showing you what has actually changed. There are other tools out there that do it. I have no relationship to the person who runs it. Maybe I should, but this is by far the best alerting tool out there, and it will allow you and your organization to detect things that, unless you had a photographic memory and reloading the page every 5 minutes, you wouldn't be able to catch.
Okay. I actually have a question here, Gary. Is it similar to Watch That Page?
It is similar to Watch That Page, but to use an overused expression, it's Watch That Page on steroids, and it's much, much, much more tweakable than Watch That Page. I was talking to a friend of mine earlier today. I was telling him about Website Watcher. You know, I've been using it for years, and every time I go and I look, there's something new being added or something I missed from the time that I was using it before. It is incredibly customizable in terms of what you can do. So yes, it is like Watch That Page, but much better, much more responsive, much more better.
Okay.
We're running out of time, correct?
All right, I have a question for you too. So you get to pick one of these. Pick one.
One of these resources. Well, I'll pick the obvious choice. Oh, by the way, Google now is limiting the number of results you can see to 300 or 400. That's another story, but one of the most useful resources that I have found is, as you can see up here at the top of my browser, is tab overload. And then keeping your tabs organized. Tab overload can also force your computer to slow down. So OneTab is a little browser add-on that I use for years, that I've been using for years. And what you can do is you can go to this page. So you can right-click. You can open one tab, send all tabs to one tab, and watch what's going to happen with all of my tabs. And now they're all in one nice lineup with a timestamp, with direct links to reopen them. And let's say, okay, this has been a great presentation, or these are a bunch of URLs I want to share with somebody. I can simply click Share as Web Page, and now I have a URL to share with everybody else.
Oh.
So it's one of my favorite productivity tools, because probably like a lot of you, over the course of an hour or so, I have a zillion tabs opening up. And I also use this really to back myself up. Every couple of hours, if I don't do it because I need to, I just close everything, and now I have a list of what I've been actually looking at for the past few hours.
Right.
Well, let me open back up the presentation.
Wow.
If you want to start the conversation, I'm a Degrassi expert. I can go into that, as Rebecca and others know. I know who Aubrey Graham was before he became Drake.
I have two questions for you.
Sure.
One is from Karen, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Stephanites. And she asks, have new laws about internet privacy in Europe and California, for example, impeded online searching for you?
Not at all. Not at all. You know, the one thing you see often, if you're people see in Europe more than we see here in North America, are things like on Google results saying this page has been removed, you know, because of whatever copyright reasons or the like. Interestingly, the BBC, for example, removes lots of pages every month and then provides a list of all the pages they've removed. So removing something from the internet often really doesn't actually remove it. Removing it from a search engine doesn't actually remove it. But no, I have not run into any internet privacy. The GDPR from the UK, the other issues involving that have not caused me a problem when it comes to doing actual web search. I'd be interested to know if they've caused a problem for you. Because digital privacy is something that we talk about quite a bit, and perhaps I can come back another time and talk about that with you.
That's great. I wonder if it has. So I am taking questions here in the chat. There are so many chats. Kevin Adams very nicely put up Copernio. Do you know Copernio?
Copernio is a tool that helps. It's very similar to when I mentioned, which one was that? When I mentioned the product from Canada, Unpaywall, it's very similar to that. And if I'm not mistaken, Kevin, Copernio now is part of Springer. You know, one thing we've been seeing a lot with whatever the tool might be is that a lot of these independent tools, if you like, have become part of larger companies. I think right now, by the way, if you're developing software dealing with conferences and open web discussions, you probably might be onto something, because matter of fact, one of the larger providers of web conferencing, it was called Blue Jeans Network.
Yes, yes.
They were purchased last week by Verizon.
Really?
I think you're going to see that happen across the board. And my colleague and I, a friend of mine and I, have been putting together a list of, we're now over 40 pieces of software that do a lot of similar to what Zoom is doing. And remember, a lot of people are using Zoom for really what it wasn't designed for. And we can save the privacy talk and the Zoom bombing issues for another time, but there's a lot of interesting things coming, especially when it revolves around AR and VR in web conferencing.
Oh, and we have been covering AR and VR too.
Right.
And Stephen says, Gary, you are a librarian's treasure. We hope to see you at IL. Yes, and Jane reminds me that you are talking about something at Internet Librarian in the fall. What was that?
What am I talking about? Probably something similar to this. I often do something for web search, what's it called? The opening thing about my favorite web search engines. You know, it's funny. One thing I've learned in doing what I do, whatever that is, it's really important to go back and things that you think you know, to go back there on a somewhat regular basis, because all of this stuff is so fluid, and resources and features that weren't there in June could be added by July or August. So one of the things I'm personally doing a lot more of is going back and checking again some of these resources and discovering what has been added, but also what has been removed. Because what you could count on, you know, look at Google, for example. Look at all the things you were able to use to be able to do with Google, and now they're gone. One of the most useful features for me was taken away last year, and that was not only, you know, you can limit by date. You could say, just show me pages crawled or recrawled in the last week. But it used to be that you could also sort by date.
Right.
So last in, first out. And
right.
Because supposedly Google doesn't have the resources to pay for all that computer processing, laugh.
Yes.
In other words, nobody used it. And, you know, because, you know, if 1 or 2 million people use something to Google, nobody's using it.
Right.
And you also wonder, you know, I mentioned Semantic Scholar and Microsoft Academic. I think it's also important to know about these things because, you know, look at Google RSS Reader. That was here today, gone tomorrow, used by so many people. One day it's here, the next day it's gone. And, you know, you wonder about the long-term viability of a service like Google, Google Scholar. You know, the amount of people who've talked to me about it over the years saying, well, there's only 3 or 4 people working on it. And that's what I believe. And the thing about Google Scholar is, again, not mentioning that it's not good or bad, it's great. But, you know, Google has certain limits on what they'll do. And right, especially the time right now, I mean, they're cutting back on a company with the vast, incredible resources financially of Google, and now they're saying they're cutting back on their marketing budget.
Yeah.
Who's to say that getting rid of Google? And that's why, for no other reason, it's good to know about a wide variety of tools.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, you know, Gary, for years, I have been talking to various associations, particularly in Canada, about having you do quarterly or at least semi-annual updates for us. And now we have SLACanada and we can do it. So
Right.
I'm eager to know if people who are here today would be interested in having Gary come back every 4 months and give us just a quick update. Because if he did it little short snippets, we could do it more often because this was fabulous. Thank you so much.
Can I mention one more resource?
Yes, go
This will be
ahead.
not going away. This might be the most important, useful tool. And I'm sure, especially those of you from academic libraries are already familiar with it. This is, again, the competition for Mendeley. This is being, and I think it's also important that we support our own, if you like.
Right.
Mendeley now is part of that company that begins with an E and ends with Essevier. Zotero has been around for years. It comes from George Mason University, located about 8 miles from where I'm sitting in Fairfax, Virginia. I used to say it could take me 2 hours to get there, but if there's anything good about this period is that there's no traffic here in Washington. But Zotero is the reference management tool that I use. Zotero is a free download. What I love about it is that I can save everything to one place and make a permanent archive of it on my hard drive. So that means web pages and PDFs and everything else. I can add in my own metadata because that's what this is really about. But again, not only have I saved everything, but for example, the thousands of PDFs that I save over the course of a year or two, all of that material is now keyword searchable on my hard drive. So while I am making a public web copy of it in Wayback and other tools, I now have a copy of it on my hard drive, and I can actually keyword search all of those PDFs or all of those web pages. So again, if you haven't tried Zotero, I encourage you to take a look at it. And if you're just needing to format a bibliography, something that students are often doing, this is Zotero Bib. It is the same type of thing as Zotero, the same designers, but this requires no download. It's using HTML5, and you can do all the formatting on it, on the web, no downloads. So Zotero and Zotero Bibs come highly recommended.
That's great. So Gary, we're going to have you come back to talk about Google and particularly their limiting. And it looks like we're going to have you back regularly.
I hope so.
Thank you so
much. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to Jane. Thank you, Rebecca. You're the best friend ever. Same with Jane and everybody else. If you need me at any time, you know where to find me. And let me see, do I need to turn my screen share off?
No, I shut you down.
Okay,
and I'm going, so just a reminder to those that are still here, that this will be on Dysart Jones. It will also be at SLACanada Connect through SLA. And we will convert the Google Doc that it's in for those of you that are blocked by Google, good heavens, or blocked because it's Google. And I think there was something else you asked too, but there's some rich information in the chat. So I will also be saving the chat and publishing that. And you can expect to see that Gary will be back here in the fall. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. See you later.
Bye.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.